My name is Chad Douglas, and today we're going to be taking a look at the legal doctrine of vicarious liability. But before we get too far into our discussion, I want you to imagine that you wake up early Saturday morning to cook breakfast and learn that you're out of milk and eggs. That's exactly what happened to this young lady. We'll call her Susie Shopper. Susie Shopper clearly needs to make a run to the local Quick Stop to pick up a few items. Meanwhile, Timmy just started his very first job as a stop boy at the Quick Stop in Susie Shopper's neighborhood. While stocking the shelves on Saturday morning, Timmy drops a carton of milk which spills all over the floor. Timmy leaves the spill without cleaning it because he's paged to the front of the store to help bag groceries. Susie Shopper arrives at the Quick Stop to pick up her breakfast items and doesn't see the spilled milk. There's no hazard sign there to warn her. She steps in the milk and slips, falling very hard on the floor and suffering a serious back injury. Susie's injuries keep her out of work for many weeks, and she runs up a lot of medical bills, and she loses a lot of wages. So who's liable? Is Timmy liable? Is the owner of the Quick Stop liable, even though he wasn't in the store when the milk was spilled? Or is Susie on her own to pay her medical bills? Well, before we answer these questions, we should first get a good understanding of the legal doctrine of vicarious liability and the legal doctrine of respondent superior. That's what we're going to do in this short video. We're going to learn what vicarious liability is, its origins, and how our courts could use it to decide certain cases. We will then take what we learn and ask ourselves who's liable for Susie Shopper's lost wages and hospital bills. Let's first answer the question, what is the legal doctrine of vicarious liability? Vicarious liability is a legal doctrine that assigns liability for an injury to a person who did not cause the injury, but who has a particular legal relationship to the person who did act negligently. There are several legal relationships that can lead to vicarious liability, including a parent and child, husband and wife, and employer and employee. One theory of liability that is based on the legal doctrine of vicarious liability is the respondent superior doctrine. The doctrine of respondent superior, which is Latin for let the master answer, is based on the employer-employee relationship. The doctrine makes the employer responsible for lack of care on the part of an employee in relation to those to whom the employer owes a duty of care. For respondent superior to apply, the employee's negligence must occur within the scope of his or her employment. Generally, if an employer may be held vicariously liable for the negligence of an employee if the injury occurred while the employee was on the clock, the injury was caused by an activity the employee was hired to perform, and the employer benefited in some way from the activity the employee was performing at the time of injury. What are the origins of legal doctrine of vicarious liability? While examples of liability for the torts of others can be found in early Roman law, the common law doctrine of respondent superior was not well established until 17th century England, when it was established to define the legal liability of an employer for the actions of an employee. This doctrine was later adopted by the United States and has become a fixture of agency law here. To best understand the legal doctrine of respondent superior, one should consider evolutions to the doctrine that occurred throughout the 19th century, which was a time of great economic growth and significant technological advancements that created a need to better define the relationship of an employer and employee. The theory behind the legal doctrine of respondent superior is that the employer controls the employee's behavior and benefits from the employee's production. Therefore, he or she must assume some responsibilities for their actions. So who's responsible, or liable rather, for Susie Shopper's injuries? Was Timmy on the clock when he spilled the milk? Was Susie's injury caused by work Timmy was hired to perform? Did the Quick Stop benefit from the work Timmy was doing? I think it's very clear in this case that Timmy was indeed on the clock, performing work that benefited the Quick Stop when he negligently spilled milk on the floor, which caused Susie Shopper to fall and suffer an injury. The Quick Stop then should be held liable for Susie's injuries and will most likely be required to compensate her for her hospital bills and all the lost wages that she suffered when she couldn't go to work. And all this is thanks to the legal doctrine of vicarious liability.
created using Powtoon.